And welcome to another Huddle Breakdown Extra Time. I'm your host Martin Murphy and joined as ever by James and by Alan. Now, really action-packed programme tonight, lots to get through. So we'll be talking in a moment about the arrival of Wilfried Nancy and also his press conference today. So that's very much the buzz in Celtic circles, as you can imagine at the moment. We'll also take time to reflect on the job Martin O'Neill's done, look at what he's brought to the club in the last few weeks. I thought a terrific job, of course. We'll get into that in a wee bit more depth. Look at the style of play and look at maybe how Nancy can hopefully take us on a little bit from there. Naturally, we'll also be discussing the victory over Dundee, the 1-0 victory, which puts us level at the top, just a couple of goals behind, 3 goals, I think, against Hearts. And we'll be looking ahead, of course, to the top of the table clash, which is coming up on Sunday, 3 p.m. against those Jambos. So right into it then, Alan. What was your thoughts on Nancy's press conference? I suppose, first of all, what did you think of how he came across as a person, and what do you think are the kind of main takeaways about his priorities?
Yeah, it was businesslike. I think if I had to sum it up in one word, a little bit odd actually, because it seems like all the fan media are on a rotation for inclusion in press conferences, and they were all kind of stood down for this. And it's not clear whether that's a permanent thing or a one-off thing, but again, it's just another example of the club just really not engaging in a positive way with supporters. So I guess I'll get that out of the way now. I don't want to sort of drone on in negativity. And the second thing was, the last 4 managers that I'm aware of that we've introduced to Scottish football has been with, flanked by Lawwell and Nicholson, or CEO and so forth. And he was sent out kind of on his own. So that was interesting. But in a sense, as I say, going back to the theme of business-like, we're in the middle of the season. We got a game in 3 days or 2 days, whatever it is. And it's kind of a feeling of we're just getting on with it about it. It was a bit low-key, though, I have to say. He himself was kind of very calm and very measured and very articulate, very, very bright, very, very honest. He's like Martin O'Neill in the sense that you get a sense he's completely authentic in what he's saying. He's not like a spoofer. Rodgers could be a spoofer, if you like. We've seen on the other side of the city, Mickey B, Russell Martin, spoofers. This guy is not a spoofer. Now, I'm not saying that means he will succeed and that he will be brilliant, but he will, if he does die, he will die on his sword authentically and doing what he believes is the right thing to do. And there will be things that people will pick up on, and I think we've seen, especially at the other side of the city, the Russell Martin experience, one of the worst bands I've ever saw, in terms of talking a lot about process and a lot about philosophy and just playing style, and then not really delivering it on the park. And he's very much a process guy, and he's very much a guy who, this is how I believe that we can win if we prepare in this way, if we focus on these aspects of play, if we follow this methodology of preparation, etc. That will give us a great chance of winning football matches. But I can't predict the future, and I can't, football being the nature that it is. And I think we're increasingly talking about luck in football, which I think is an unexplored topic, because I think it's uncomfortable for people to realise how much luck plays a factor in football. He can't control that. So, and that is, just from an intellectual perspective, that's absolutely spot on. Now, whether that warms the cockles of the traditional Scottish football supporter who just wants to hear that you're going to get stuck in and win, I don't know. Probably not. So to some it might come across as being a bit pseudy, a bit sort of intellectual, a bit sort of soft, a bit kind of David Brent almost. I think that's unfair. I think he, as I say, authentic would be one word that I would use. Very calm, very measured, seemed very confident in himself, which, let's face it, most football people are. Whether they should be or not is another matter. So listen, we all start on the sort of top of the hill, don't we, in terms of optimism when new manager, new player. We've talked, I hope people realise we've talked sufficiently about the risks involved in this appointment, and there are significant risks in this appointment, as there are in any, especially around the timing of it and the factors outside of his control about the current state of the squad, the number of injuries, the lack of preparation time, the fact that he's not really going to have any sort of say on personnel. He's not like got a summer to recruit or anything like that. So, and then just but he did cover the fact that and he mentioned this. He had a quick interview the day before on Celtic TV, and he used the same term in the press conference about how will you implement your philosophy, how will you implement your way of your style of play. He said, it has to be nuanced. It has to be adding layers of nuance. We can't just throw everything out the window and start again. He didn't say that. I'm putting words into his mouth. The word he used was adding nuance. So it sounds like he's realizes, and he's an intelligent man. It sounds like he realizes he can't just rip it up. He's got to look at what's there and build on it. And very much in terms of one other thing that stuck out for me, in terms of when he was asked about the players, he didn't immediately go, "Oh yeah, we need 10 players in January." He was like, "Oh, I don't know really." He said, "I've seen them all. I've watched them on video. I know them all as footballers. I don't know them as human beings, and that's the next step for me, is to get to know them as people." And again, that is rational. That's perfectly rational. And he said a lot of it will be about. He said, he was asked about what would you change, what would you think needs developing, and he talked about confidence. He talked about some players needing to build their confidence, and I thought that was a very positive way of. You're not coming in saying you're all rubbish, I'm going to replace you all. He's saying, I've seen you all, I know you all as footballers, I want to know you as people, and I want to give you the tools, I want to give you the confidence to be the best version of yourself, and that's where we start from. And I think and I think Celtic should have the strongest squad in the country, so that is a sensible place to start. And there was a lot of players we haven't seen a lot of. So I'm hopeful that some of those players that we haven't seen a lot of, we might benefit from this new new ideas, new fresh perspective, if you like.
Thanks, Alan. And also, he was talking about how he had the chat with Martin and Neil, which one would expect. And as you say, he seemed to be singing from the same sort of hymn sheet. You could see some similarities between their styles in terms of playing things down, about the importance of instilling confidence, etc. in players. Noticed after the match against Dundee, he had the arm. Martin had the arm around young Yang, and was telling him, you need to keep doing it consistently, young man, and all these sorts of things. So he's kind of setting him the challenges and building up his confidence, and I think it's terrific if our new manager Nancy is cut from the same sort of cloth as Martin O'Neill. James, I thought it was possibly quite significant that he's unlike some previous coaches of ours coming in with some of his own team there. Apadou has also got a fitness coach, Jules Guegan, and a video performance coach, Maxime Chalet. Now, I'll go so far as to call you our American expert, James, in the MLS. So based on what you know about Columba and their success, how much do you think it was kind of, I know it's a bit of both, but what did they have in place over there that Nancy benefited from that we may not have? And how big a role do you think these three guys could have, given that Nancy's moved to a new country in a very demanding environment?
Yeah, that's part of the risk here, is that it's impossible to kind of know with a high degree of confidence what the attribution is on that. You can come up with ways to try and analyze it. I think anecdotally there was some concern about
We hope you enjoyed this free preview from all of us here at the Huddle Breakdown. We know you have options, and we really appreciate you tuning in. To hear the rest of this episode and for much more Huddle Breakdown content, head on over to www.huddlebreakdown.com. We hope you consider subscribing. Thank you.